Hey everybody, welcome to the Fire It Up with CJ show. Today we have the honor of having Timber Hawkeye from the Buddhist boot camp here, and we're going to be talking about his upcoming book, Faithfully Religionless, as well as some other things. I've got lots and lots of questions. So welcome, Timber.
Hey CJ, Fire It Up with CJ. I love it.
Exactly.
It's fired up.
So let's first talk about your book. What inspired your book?
The Buddhist boot camp or the next one?
Nah, Faithfully Religionless.
What inspired it is the first book, actually. A lot of people wanted to hear more of the personal stories behind everything I've learned along the way. It seems that the more I share, the more personal I get, the more intimate it is, the more relatable it is, because we're not actually all battling different things. We're all actually challenged by very similar obstacles along the way, but when we don't talk about them, we feel very alienated, we feel very alone and different from other people, so we keep it to ourselves because we're afraid other people will judge us. And what I do, as you've seen me do both in public talks and online, is I just share openly whatever it is I'm currently being challenged by, and I'm not judged for it. People actually are able to relate and say, yeah, me too. Or, you know, oh, I could have written this, or do we have the same mother? You know, just because they're not different demons, they're all the same. And yet, you know, even though we are more connected to one another than we've ever been before through social media and whatnot, we're not using it to actually connect. We're using it to project a very false image of who we really are, in desperate hopes that people will like us for this false image. And when we actually meet people in person and actually try to uphold that image, things start to fall apart, and then we wonder why things aren't actually working out like we thought, because it's impossible to keep up the act for very long. And we're so afraid of being judged that we're so quick to judge other people for their shortfallings because it takes the focus off of our own. Does that make sense?
It absolutely makes sense. And when you came to Seattle and you spoke, that was really palpable, where you're sharing stories of your mother and you're sharing just your life stories. And it makes you think, God, we all share the same experience. And what I really loved about when you presented it, it wasn't as if sometimes you go and someone's presenting themselves as a guru. You didn't come in and say, I'm the Buddhist guru, now all bow to me. It's more like, my life is so screwed up. Is yours? Here's what I did. What are you doing? It's like a support group. It was so refreshing, I think.
Yeah, that's, I think, because what I'm doing in my work, I treat everything in my life like an experiment. And the book itself was written from a place of inquiry. It was written from a place of, let's find out, you know, like, I just discovered this about myself. Let's look deeper into that and see what hides underneath all these layers. And the first book, Buddhist Boot Camp, was very, you know, every chapter is only a page long. It was like these little journal entries along the way, letters and emails that I sent to my friends over the course of a few years. But when I do these talks, people want more details. They want, tell me more, tell me more. And so the next book is going to be that. It's kind of going to be like this memoir of this. Here it is spelled out. I woke up in the morning, and no, I'm kidding. It's just going to be a little more in depth. So, because the details that I left out in the first one are what people are really hungry for, to make it even more applicable, and without it being so detailed that it's no longer relatable. You know? So, you know, I can say, oh, I worked at a law firm, and someone goes, well, I can't relate to that. You know, but when you just say I worked in the corporate world, anyone can apply that to their lives. And the message is so universal that, you know, it's about gratitude and kindness. I think we can all use a whole lot more of that in our lives, which I think is interesting. I was recently introduced to a question asked, you know, when you say I love you, what do you mean? And the way Thich Nhat Hanh translated it, he said, when you say I love you, you're saying I'm offering you peace and happiness. But in order to be able to offer that to you, I have to first have it myself. And, you know, we've all heard you can't love someone until you love yourself. But it's like, okay, that's great stitched on a pillow, but what does it really mean? And so all this work to find true happiness and inner peace and all that is not selfish. It's so we can then offer that to others.
Mm-hmm.
So even the act of self-development is selfless.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's interesting because the one thing that after our first interview, which is the first time I had ever met you, we had talked about how do you shift into a 20-hour work week, because you managed to cobble together like 3 jobs and living in various different places and, getting a car with advertisement on it. I mean, it was a fabulous story. And what struck me about the way that you live life, because it was a particular focus, like you're saying, you have an experience, right? My experience at that time was, how do I navigate more through love than fear?
Yeah.
And it was interesting having you stroll along and show what that meant. It really showed what that meant. So it's a slightly different view on love, but I did want, after thinking about our first interview, I wanted to ask you about how you are able. So you just talked about love and what it means, and actually cultivating self-love in a sense of gratitude and forgiveness and love for yourself. Yeah. Was that your first step? And it really does seem that you navigate your life through love versus fear. How did you arrive there?
And it was an interesting journey because, it's a lot of it is based in faith, just trusting that everything's going to work out. Mm-hmm. And I used to really envy people who said they had so much faith, because I was like, that doesn't make sense. Faith isn't logical. Mm-hmm. And faith isn't logical. And so for someone who is so logical and has to have everything make sense, to introduce faith into it was this really interesting, almost, I don't want to say hypocrisy, but there was something that I needed to let go of in order to allow faith to take over. Mm-hmm. And what I needed to let go of was the need to know. When you let go...
That is so hard to do.
When you let go of the need to know and you just focus on the love base, like I know the kind of life I want to lead. I'm really clear about my intentions, about my vow to be of service to others. That I know, and how that's going to manifest itself, I have no idea. And I can spend every minute of every day trying to control the little hairy details of how I'm gonna make a book tour across Australia happen. I don't know how I'm gonna make it. I don't have enough money to fly there. I don't know where I'm gonna stay. I don't know what bookstores are gonna host me. Right. I don't know, but I have that determination, and I believe that if I put it out there, then it's gonna happen. Right. And so that's a lot of faith in the unknown. And so I put it out there, and immediately it comes into play, and my hope is that I just lead by example, that I just show people like, this isn't just good in theory. I am a walking example of manifesting realities, not having, you mentioned that, like the not having a car in Hawaii for 10 years, moving to Southern California, you have to have a car. Well, how am I going to do that? I don't have money for a car. Well, look, you can get paid. It was like $150 a month to drive around a car that's wrapped in advertisement. Right. And if you lease this car, it's only $99 a month to lease it. So if you do the math, you'll actually make money driving around. And it's absolutely brilliant, but we have to think way outside the box. Yeah. We have to let go of the blueprint. When I say let go of the need to know, a lot of times we have this idea in our heads of exactly how things are supposed to work out. Mm-hmm. And sometimes things are actually working out in our favor, and we don't realize that they are because they're not playing out the way we thought they would.
Right. Not meeting our expectations.
Yeah. And so sometimes when things are falling apart, they're actually falling into place. But we're so quick to look at it and judge it as a negative and say, this is happening to me, rather than take a step back and go, okay, this is happening for me. Not quite sure why yet. I'm not quite sure what I'm supposed to learn from this, but I do believe that nothing happens to me, that I am not a victim, that this isn't supposed to trigger fear, but just curiosity. Right. And that's a whole new approach. So you asked how I got there, and I think it was through just curiosity, just going, what's going on here?
Right. Well, you said it was faith, and the way you developed faith was to let go of the need to know, which was right. But it seems easy to say, hard to do. Right?
I don't know. We don't know. We don't know that we're going to be here tomorrow. We have faith that we'll be here tomorrow. We
Yeah,
don't
that's
know
true.
what's going to happen. We have a lot more faith than we give ourselves credit for.
Yeah,
It's
could be true.
just we don't know. It's just when we actually admit that to ourselves that I don't know. My teachers actually invited me to do that meditation, just sit there and chant, don't know.
I love
Until
that.
you become comfortable with not knowing
I
because we
love
don't
that.
know.
Yeah.
And instead of that scaring us, instead of that scaring me, I don't know where I'm going to live 3 months from now. I don't. I'm okay with that because
Yeah.
it doesn't scare me because that could mean I could be in Seattle, I could be in California, or I could be in New Zealand.
Right.
What's more exciting than that,
Yeah.
Because anything is possible. I just have to really tap into what are my intentions in the world. If my intentions are to do good, to live a full life, to be happy no matter where I am, and manifest the realities, then I can make that happen anywhere. And so when I meet people, I plant seeds and I try to figure out, do I go back to Hawaii? Well, what can I do in Hawaii? And how can that work? And it may not happen in Hawaii. And that's okay because I don't have a blueprint of where it's going to happen.
Right.
I do have one caveat that I need to be warm. That's the one thing.
I don't know, but I do know my intention is to be warm.
My intention is to be warm. I would love for there to be an ocean, some mountains, and I'm not sure where that's gonna. And that still leaves quite a few options, because it could mean New Zealand, and people go, well, New Zealand does get cold. I'm like, well, then I'll go somewhere else where it's warm. Come back. There are so many options, and
so it's don't know and open to whatever possibilities come up. And using your intentions to help you decide. That's
not decide, manifest. I mean, it's not just a decision. It's not all logic. So I'll give you a perfect example. And it's impossible for me to talk about my life without it sounding like I'm bragging, but I'm going to do it anyway.
Okay.
Because, it's like, who does this? How do you go from there to there? And so I was on a flight to Australia, and I always make friends with the flight attendants no matter where I am. It's a lot easier to do with Hawaiian Airlines because they're wonderful. And so we get to talking, and before you know it, I'm hosting a Buddhist boot camp book talk in the galley with all the flight attendants right there on a 10-hour flight to Sydney. And we make really good friends, and they love the message. They love the intention of what I'm doing in the world. And they all kind of got together and said, you know what, we're going to extend our flight benefits to you. So if you need to give a book event somewhere and funds are low.
Oh my goodness.
I know. And so just let us know. It's free. It's, it's standby, but it's free.
Yeah.
Which is wonderful because I'm, in 3 days I'm going to Seattle, and then after that I'm going to Chicago to give a talk at a college and then a seminar at a yoga studio. But it's all for lower income. It's all for and so they have to do a fundraiser just to pay for the airplane, So when this happens more and more, especially now that the book is being used in so many prisons across the country, and they're inviting me to speak at the correctional facilities, but they don't have a budget to fly me out there, that's where Hawaiian Airlines can come in and say, hey, we can put you there. If that's the obstacle of you enriching the lives of others, it's not a concern for us. Go. There are many ways, there are so many ways that we can think of outside the box other than, I'm sorry to say, a 40-hour work week, going back to our last conversation. Because we think, I have to have money. It's like, wait, there's a place to live. There are more empty homes in our country than there are homeless people.
Yeah.
It's a terrible, terrible ratio, but, how can we contribute to that? Well, find someone who has a vacation home, a beach house that they're willing to rent out or lend out, just go take care of it, be a caretaker of their property. They'll appreciate having you there, and you'll have a place to live. It's a win-win.
Yeah, what I love about your whole attitude of faith and don't know and manifesting is that it's not about sitting on the couch and just hoping something wonderful will happen. You're working at every single moment. It's like, okay, I know I want this, I know I want that. So I'm just going to put it out there. That's one thing. And then
keep my eyes open. It's going to come back because it may not come back the way I thought it would.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because people are like, do a Kickstarter campaign to raise money for the flights and all that. I'm like, that's one option, but it's not the only option.
Right.
There are other alternatives. Just be so open to the solution looking very, very different than how you thought it would.
Yeah. So initially you said it was you yourself had a certain amount of skepticism, like, oh really? Like, real, and
Absolutely.
then how did you move from that initial place of skepticism to where you are right now, where like I don't know where I'm going even like 5 minutes from now.
Yeah. Experiment. I said, you know what? I've experimented with skepticism long enough. It's not working for me.
Right.
I see people who have faith and things seem to just kind of work out for them.
Yeah.
As an experiment, let's just say for the next year, 3 months, whatever you're comfortable with, let's just try to put positive energy out in the world. Let's just try to keep a mind open, to not react to what's happening around me, but just observe and see how it sits with me.
Mm-hmm.
And just see, and then, because here's CJ, here's the thing. Okay, we all have a 100% track record of surviving everything that's happened in our lives, correct?
Yes. We're alive now. We have 100% success.
Exactly. So at what point do we think that things aren't going to work out? Like, we have proof. Everything always does.
Yeah.
And yet, we're so quick to be skeptic that the next thing won't. Of course it will. And if you're applying for a job and you don't get it, trust that you not getting it is things falling into place,
Right.
not falling apart.
Right.
It's having faith that that's the way it's supposed to be, not the way you thought in your head.
Right.
It's letting go of the blueprint. It's not just expectation.
Right.
Expectations are almost too broad. The blueprint, we have like, I did wedding photography for a few years.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing made me want to sell my camera more than doing a wedding because talk about, you've heard the term bridezillas, they have a very specific idea of how their wedding's supposed to turn out.
Yes.
And they'll freak out at the smallest thing. Mm-hmm. Even though it's like, whoa, zoom out. Everything's good.
Right.
And yet they're so blinded to how good everything is because they're comparing it to the blueprint.
Ah, I see what you're saying. Okay.
Get rid of the blueprint. Just allow, accept, surrender.
Mm-hmm.
And not giving every little thing that happens in our lives so much weight. Mm-hmm. Just kind of, just flow through it. It's nothing is that big a deal.
Yeah. And I guess it does take that practice every single day for 3 months. And probably when you catch yourself saying, oh, well, I wonder, it's like, nope, there's no good point. Just no. I love the meditation of, what did you were like, I don't know.
Don't know.
Don't know.
Because we don't know. We don't know where you're going to work tomorrow. You think you know where you're going to work tomorrow, but you can lose your job today.
Yeah.
But what you can know, what you can reassure yourself of is that regardless of what happens, you'll be okay. Mm-hmm. Because you have faith that, okay, so I'll lose my job. Maybe that's not the worst thing in the world. Maybe that's actually a gift. Maybe that's because there's something else coming up. Because in my experience, something else always comes up.
Right.
If someone breaks up with you, maybe that's a good thing.
Yeah, I talked to someone who said, he had a great quote. I don't know if I can quote it exactly, but when you let go of something, it's actually opening up space so something else can arise. Yeah. Because if you don't let go of whatever that is, the job, the girlfriend, the apartment or whatever, or the blueprint in your mind, nothing new can kind of fill in the space. You're just kind of constantly like holding it in abeyance, not allowing anything to flow in.
Yeah, so, and I think that's why the book is going to be called Faithfully Religionless, is because when I tell people that I don't have a religion, they automatically assume that I don't believe in God. And nothing could be farther from the truth. I do. It's just not tied to any religion. It doesn't look like any blueprint that you can find somewhere. Mm-hmm. I have faith in the process that has proven itself to me. I didn't have to seek or look for proof. It's the fact that I'm here is proof enough.
Right.
Right. And so it's just this self-fulfilling, refilling.
So is it anti-religion, or is it just?
No.
It's just.
No. It just talks about not at all. I mean, if religion works for you and it re-enriches your faith, right. and by all means, it's great. It's just the uncoupling of God from religion.
Okay.
Is just not, because ultimately a lot of people have had some kind of bad experience either with religion or the church or the Bible. Right. And a lot of people are walking away from the church. And when they do away with the church, they do away with everything.
Everything.
God,
everything.
Jesus, the Bible, religion, prayer, anything.
Right.
And then they're left kind of lost and wondering, going, I don't know where I belong now.
Right.
And I'm like, well, you belong in Buddhist boot camp. You just don't know it yet.
Yeah.
And so we have these meetings where we all get together. It's kind of like a recovery.
That's what it felt like. It felt like if like an AA meeting, not that I've been to one, like I'd sit around, I'm like, well, here's the thing that's really bothering me, and I'd come in and you would share a story or someone, it always seemed like, but it seemed like people were completely willing to just be vulnerable and divulge whatever was going on with them.
Yeah.
Which is a gift that you have, right? For people to be willing to do that.
I think that's just it. It's not a gift that I have. It's a gift that we all have. I just lead by example. It's in a room full of people. It does take one person to be the first one to say, hey, I'm insecure about this. Right. And then someone goes, yeah, me too. But it takes that first person to raise their hand and say that. And so I'm hoping the book actually puts on paper a lot of people's thoughts that they've been thinking but have been too afraid to say. Yeah.
What are you hearing in the meetings? Since you have Australia, you have a couple of other countries that you've been to or going to, you're going all over the US. I looked at your event calendar. What is there a common theme that people are bringing up when you do meet with them?
Yeah, it's this invitation that I have for everyone to live in line with their core values. And what's come up recently, which was really interesting, is that, because I invite people to write down their core values and describe the kind of person they are and what kind of person they want to be, and then cross-reference it with the person they are to see where there's work to do. Which is wonderful because you're inviting yourself to be the best version of you there is. And so it's really wonderful. And when you are in a relationship, you can share that with someone and have them help you along the way. It's just what came up recently in a meeting is she said, okay, I get that and I understand and I'm looking forward to going home and writing this down because I've done it before. And what I've discovered is that my core values may be very similar to yours, but they're in a different order in the sense of priority. So someone may, she was talking about honesty, for example. And she said that's at the top of her thing, to be always, always, always honest. And so that whole discussion broke out. Is it really good to always be honest? And of course, examples come up of situations where perhaps it's actually, okay to not be honest. And someone used the example of if you're hiding Jews in the basement during Nazi Germany and a soldier comes up, do you say honestly, oh yeah, or do you value the life that you're saving more than you value honesty? Because she put honesty at the top of everything. Because, Gandhi said that when our thoughts, our words, and our actions are in alignment, that's when we find true happiness. And so for our thoughts, our words, and our actions to be in alignment, we have to live in line with our core values. So I understand her dilemma saying, well, one of my core values is to be honest. And so I would create dissonance if I somehow justify breaking one of my core values. So she had a really hard time there. But I love that this discussion actually blew up into an online discussion with over 3,000 people participating.
Wow.
And the most beautiful, I guess, resolution to it all was a quote, and I forget who it's by, but it said, "Today I bent the truth in order to be kind, because I am far more sure of what is kind than I am of what is true."
Beautiful. Wow, right? This is from your comment and the form. Wow.
Yeah, someone left that. Wow. And I was like, that is brilliant.
Beautiful.
And I don't remember who said it, but that everyone took a step back and went, yeah, that's a good point, because we have this idea that our truth is the ultimate truth.
Right.
But the first.
There's so many truths, right? I mean, what is truth?
Yeah. And that's what, the Buddhist boot camp, the first principle is the opposite of what is also true.
Yeah.
To allow ourselves to be open and accepting that someone else's truth is just as valid and real to them as our truth is to us.
Yeah, I just talked to someone about values, and he was saying, and I thought actually his point was he's a very realistic, pragmatic guy. That's I don't think he even describes it as his shtick, but like when I meet him, that's his shtick. Okay. But he said, you list out your values. And the thing is that you're not always going to be living your values 100%, 100% all of the time. And so if you're living some of your values, so for example, let's say that, my values are about family. Fun is a really high value of mine. Helping others, being of service, those are values, very high values. Love, those are high values of mine. There are going to be times when, I'm yelling at my kids, or I'm trying not to, but I am anyways, right? Okay. So I'm not living a place of love or family. But, and I think the thing that's hard is when you are actually start judging yourself and feeling like, well, now I'm a bad person because I'm not living my values, versus saying, you know what, I'm living another, whatever value. I'm sure I'm living some other value that's not on my core list that I'm also valuing, which is, self-preservation or, whatever it may be.
Yeah. But
it's hard.
Bringing awareness to that, and even sometimes in the middle of you yelling at your kids, if you catch yourself and go, this is not the kind of person I want to be. This is actually not what I want to do. This is not the type of relationship I want to have with my children. Then you can stop, like even mid.
Yeah, no, I have.
And go, oh, okay. Well, let me just realign that. Sorry, guys.
Yeah.
Mommy slipped, and that's okay. That's where and I think being honest about that. It's like we talked about in the meeting, being vulnerable, telling the kids, hey, mommy's trying to be kind and patient, and you guys are really helping me work on that.
Oh yeah, usually I go all in. I'll say, yeah, what really got mommy's upset because I have an old pattern triggered by my mommy. And the pattern is, and then they're like, oh my God. I get super deep with them, but they get it. Then they're like, and I said, I'm terribly sorry. I don't mean, I didn't mean any harm, but I know that I harmed anyways.
And I think that's the greatest lesson that parents can teach their children is that parents make mistakes, that parents are not always perfect, that parents are still a work in progress, and that the kids are actually helping them along that. And they can actually congratulate you when you do make a decision that's in line with your values and go, good for you, Mom. It's really beautiful because you're helping them navigate and they're helping you navigate. It's not a hierarchy. It's just really, you're in this together.
Yeah.
Especially when you have a conversation with someone or you're trying to have a fun day with someone and someone's throwing a tantrum, you're like, hey, you're kind of ruining everyone's fun.
Right. That's a high value of moms. So what are some of the other themes that are coming across? I mean, do you see that there are difference when you go to Australia or England or the US? Are they different, or is it pretty much the same about values and what do they mean?
We're all battling similar demons. The majority of the audience are women because they're more comfortable with the concept of vulnerability. Mm-hmm. The men who are in the audience are always the plus one. The one that women brought with them. And yet at the end, they're like, I didn't want to come here, but I'm really glad I did.
Oh, nice.
And so that's really, really nice.
Yeah.
Also reaching out, again, because the book is being used by so many different high schools. In fact, on Wednesday, I'm going to speak at a high school in California, Rio Mesa, which is second year now. They're using it as part of the curriculum. It's really nice to see more young audience reaching out for the message. And I think it's because we live in an age where we can search for answers. Right. Everyone's got Google in their pocket. It's wonderful. You don't have to go to your parents anymore or to the church or to your teachers. You've got Google now. And when you Google an answer for something, you're going to get many different answers.
Yeah, sadly, we don't know, and then we do know. This false sense of knowing, right?
Yeah, well, the idea is what Google gives you back is not one definitive answer.
Yeah.
It gives you conflicting answers.
Yeah.
And you're still like, well, I don't know, but I know that some people believe this, I know that some people believe this, and I know that some people believe that. And that's actually a really great awareness that there isn't one truth. Again, so we move away. But another common theme that I see in all the meetings is this really huge weight lifted off people's shoulders when they realize that they can't blame other people for their feelings. Mm-hmm. I think we may have talked about it last time about the difference between a feeling and an emotion is when you can't say you make me feel. The minute you start a sentence with you make me feel is you're making yourself a victim and that your inner peace can somehow be disturbed by someone else's behavior. Mm-hmm. It's I'm choosing this feeling. And then you're like, well, why am I doing this? Is your invitation to not choose to be angry or frustrated. Because you can say something offensive to me and I can choose not to be offended. The choice is mine.
Right.
So that's a really kind of like, people just kind of want to keep talking about that.
Just to own up to like, actually, well, yeah, well, he made me feel that. Like when he came here and he was yelling, you made me feel mad. It's like, well, actually, you chose to react in that way. Right.
Yeah. So, because someone can come in and if no one can, Eleanor Roosevelt said, no one can make you feel inferior without your consent. And I believe no one can make you feel anything without your consent. And so when we realize that, then it's like, I'm choosing this. I'm choosing to be angry right now. And it doesn't, and it may even feel justified. And you can say, you know what, I need to feel this.
Yeah.
I'm not saying suppress them all. Just feel them. Just honor it. Like, hey, it's a temporary feeling. I'm going to give myself 30 minutes to be angry. And then after that, I'm going to let it go. And that, I think that's really a good way to look at it because feelings are extremely temporary. It's just, I'll honor the temporariness of them.
Yeah, I love actually, there's a whole bunch. The thing that I think is like the most exciting and fascinating thing that's happening nowadays is neuroscience and how people are taking what they're learning about the brain. And actually there is this hijacking of the brain that happens, so when, your husband comes in and drops his clothes on, his jacket and shoes in the middle of the hallway and you're like, wee, wee, wee. Like your amygdala goes off and you just go into like you're making me feel crazy, that kind of mode. It's like before that even like escalates into that point, you go, wow, I'm feeling kind of angry. And before I go yelling at my husband, I probably need to kind of just sit down and like, wow, what was that all about? Yeah. And then calmly kind of feel maybe feel the injustice or the anger or I don't know what, I'm not sure. My husband doesn't do that, but feel whatever you're going to feel.
I was going to say, do we need to talk about this?
No, my husband's actually pretty good. Actually, I'm just as guilty as
you're the one dropping your clothes.
No, we're both actually, the whole family is guilty about having us because we have like drop our shoes and our jackets all over the place. The front hallway's a mess. But anyways, I think that what's interesting is just taking that break, and just saying, actually, I am being hijacked. My emotions are like escalating. They're getting hijacked because it's triggering all sorts of fear inside of me. And I need to just feel it. If I haven't caught it before it goes crazy, just feel it, breathe, whatever, and calm my nervous system down. And then if you still want to talk to, your husband or whatever, go ahead. Yeah. But it's interesting.
My friend has a practice of, she calls it naming her demons.
Yeah.
And like what I was saying earlier, when you write out that paragraph of the kind of person you want to be, the kind of mother you want to be, the kind of wife you want to be, you have a pretty clear idea of how you want to be. And when you're behaving in a way that isn't in line with that, then you live, like you said, you're hijacked. You're actually, when you get angry, you're actually becoming someone you're not. That's not who you be. So my friend names that person, that angry, she gives like an A name to angry, like Angela, and J name for jealousy.
Angela just showed up?
Yeah, so angry Angela shows up, or jealous Jessica shows up.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, and that way, you can see it, and you're like, whoa, there's Angela.
Yeah.
All right, Angie, listen, you're not invited. Like, I see you, I know you want to act out right now, but you're not invited. And it's very much like trying to tame the beast. And that, I think, happens through just continuous years of meditation.
Yeah, it does.
And that's where people go. It's like, how did you get there? And I think that it sounds like a far stretch, but when you're sitting there meditating, and when you say you make your commitment to do it for, 20 minutes or whatnot, then you're saying to yourself, for the next 20 minutes, I'm just going to sit here and I'm not going to move. Doesn't matter what happens, I'm not going to move. My cell phone ringer is turned off. I'm not going to answer any calls that are coming in. If my foot falls asleep, I'm just going to let it fall asleep. And then your mind will do anything to get you to because your mind has been in control your whole life, and you learn to control it, which is the whole point of meditation, to learn to control the mind instead. So the mind will do any trick it can, and it'll be like, oh, but there's an itch in the back of your neck. Aren't you going to scratch it? Aren't you going to scratch it? Aren't you going to scratch it? And you're like, no, I'm not going to scratch it. I'm not going to do that, because for the next 20 minutes, I'm just going to sit here. Right. So you just shut up and let me do this, and you literally, and then your mind's going to say, but there's a spider on your nose, or whatever it's going to do to get you to break that concentration. And the benefits of that meditation, of sitting there for 20 minutes, even if your foot falls asleep, even if there's, an itch in the back of your neck, which does go away when you ignore it, surprisingly enough.
Yeah.
The benefits of those 20 minutes aren't going to necessarily be experienced in those 20 minutes.
Yeah.
But throughout the day or later in life, when something happens and you want to act, you want to react when your husband comes home and throws his stuff on the ground or whatever, and you're just like, I'm not going to disturb, I'm not going to move for the next,
Right.
I'm not going to let what's happening out there disturb my inner peace.
Yeah.
Now, when I decide to, like you said, later on, maybe have a conversation with him saying, I don't care that your bag is in the middle of the hallway, but what that communicates to me is that you think it's my job to pick up after you, and that's not what I signed up for.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, oh, I don't expect you to pick up after me. I was planning on doing that after I went for my run,
right,
or whatever. And then
right,
you're like, oh, it just ends up being a misunderstanding. You
yeah,
can knock it off and go on a run together, ideally. So
you probably need it after that.
but just really those 20 minutes every day, and that everydayness of it is actually really important, because the benefits are going to show up so many times throughout life.
Yeah.
When someone tries to disturb your inner peace, and you're just going to sit there and you're going to be like, I'm not going to let you make me angry, because you can't make me angry.
Yeah,
it's a choice that I'm going to make.
I think that I've had a couple. I had from doing this interview with Dan Siegel. Do you know who he is? He's from LA, and he does stuff on no drama discipline, and he was talking about neuroscience, and so I've been trying some of those techniques. And so instead of getting like instant, I'm like, here's what meditation does. I just feel that, did you do your homework? I'm about to like say something like, I don't understand why your sister says, because didn't you do your homework? I'm about to escalate. Like even like my voice escalates. I kind of feel the escalation, and then I go, and I kind of go down, and I was like, okay, you're presuming the worst. You're presuming that your kid doesn't know what he's doing, what's happening. And so I'd say, hey, I noticed that you were seeming a little bit stressed out about your homework. What's going on?
Yeah.
And then usually there's like, oh, well, some really logical explanation, not the kind of like
because
awful.
The question is often really already you're on the offensive,
so
they're immediately on the defensive.
Yeah, you're not going to get into college with these grades. It's like I'm already going into how you're going to get into Harvard.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
Really, CJ?
I'm just saying, like, I mean, if moms are really honest, that's what they go immediately, like, how are you going to get into college? You're going to be, how are you going to be successful? Blah, you
can't do your homework now. How are you ever going to complete your
your work task? You're going to be a failure at work, But just simply like, hey, what happened? And then I've been trying that over the last probably week and a half since I did that interview. And every single time there's like a completely logical answer that I think, thank God I didn't go crazy, because had I, what I would do normally was kind of escalate and then make matters 100 times worse, because when you escalate, the other person escalates, and then you're on a full-on war.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I noticed that last time and again this time, you're very aware of how your body changes and reacts to certain situations. Last time we talked about tension, and I was talking about white knuckling my way through things. And when I notice that tension, that's when I ease up. Yeah. And you said you feel it in your jaw when your jaw tightens. Yeah. And now you're talking about how you notice your voice gets higher when
it's so disastrously bad. Sounds awful. When you like can't stand yourself, you're like, I just can't stand myself. Sometimes I watch these videos and people are like, you're hideous. I'm like, yeah, sometimes I do feel hideous. You know what I mean? Like you're like, oh, I can't believe myself. But the voice is one area where my voice just right up there.
Yeah, and that's really great awareness that we can bring to our own behavior and go, hey, look, this is where. And those are not failures. These are lessons.
I don't view it as failure. These are just how you learn. You're trying to figure out the operating manual of CJ. It takes a freaking lifetime.
Well, and they keep changing the operating system. As soon as you got it figured out, there's a new upgrade.
Exactly.
It's just like everything else, like your Mac trying to use Skype today.
Exactly. All right, so tell me a little bit about the work that you're doing in prisons, because I find that really interesting. Like, what are the people? When you're in prisons, what are the things that people are talking about, and what really gave you a unique perspective that you didn't have, because this is a really unique population.
Yeah, it's a very unique experience, and yet it's gratitude that resonates more than anything. I think the greatest experience, 2 weeks before I left to Australia, I went to the largest women's prison in California, and they've all read the book. And then they invited me to come and talk to them.
Wow.
And I'm sitting there, and the most beautiful story from that day was this woman told me how grateful she is to be in prison because she's learning things there that she wouldn't learn on the outside. And she couldn't wait to get out and introduce her family to this whole new version of herself.
Wow.
You know? And I'm like, you're grateful to be here. She goes, oh yeah, it's been such a great growing experience. And I'm not angry about getting caught. I'm not angry about who framed me. And I'm not angry because then I wouldn't see what's here for me to learn before I move on from here. Like, this is a step in my journey. This isn't a dead end. And I'm like, whoa. And so if someone in a situation that we on the outside would consider as terrible and horrible and the last resort, if someone in that situation can be really grateful to be there and say, maybe I needed a timeout, you know, maybe this is a good thing. And while I'm here, I'm actually getting access to the help and the information that I need, which is my intention. So that's my work. My intention is to bring the correctional back into correctional facilities. Right. Because they're not storage units. And so through the Buddhist Bootcamp website, actually, there's a link to the Books to Prisons project. And going to it, it's Buddhist Bootcamp Basic Training. We did a 6-week live Q&A video session that was international. People logged in from all over the world, and we had this Q&A. Every week we picked a different topic. And it was all recorded. And so now, even though that live session is done for now, the recorded sessions are still available. So when people make a donation to the Books to Prisons project, they immediately get access to 6 hours of this video Q&A. That's really wonderful. And all that money goes to printing, because the book is only available in hardcover. And most prisons don't allow hardcover books into the cells of prisons, of inmates. So we had to get HarperCollins to print a paperback edition of the book, not for retail, but specifically for prisons. But of course, that cost a lot of money. And so I'm like, well, I can't afford it. Let's do like a Kickstarter thing. And we did, it was Indiegogo campaign, and we raised, a lot of money to pay for the first batch. And then we did this 6 hours of Q&A. And I'm about to do another one because tomorrow I'm getting a couple of thousand. I keep running, all these prisons keep wanting more. And now it's prisons, it's schools, it's veteran programs, it's juvenile centers, it's Zen programs for inner city kids, all the, and they're all implementing the book into their existing programs, which is wonderful. So it's not my doing. This is you guys. This is everyone out there who says, yeah, I'd like to contribute to this. And it's an incredible thing. So
well, it's really so wonderful because people need help. Like, they're really suffering and they need help. And probably, like you were saying, they may have abandoned their previous religion, so there's not, a pastor or a minister or whatever to talk to. Yet people still have these issues that they're wrestling with. And so when you sit together in a circle, whether it's in Seattle and you come here on April 3rd at 5 p.m. or
hey,
at East West Bookstore.
I know it's when East West had the availability, and I know that it's 5 o'clock in the evening, and most people perhaps don't get off work at 5, but I would love nothing more than to be the reason for people to leave work early.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's really wonderful to just sit in circle and to talk. We don't make time anymore to do that, and we aren't used to talking about stuff live. You may go on a rant online. You know what I mean? Which is really different, right?
Yeah, it's very different. This whole idea, and I think that's what some of religions and the churches do offer that's beneficial, is the idea of a congregation, or in Buddhist circles, it's the Sangha. Yeah. But a lot of people have really strong resistance that, I'll sit in a circle, but if there's a minister present, I want nothing to do with it. I'm not going to talk to them. If you talk about God, I don't want to have anything to do with it. And so there's this hunger for a congregation with resistance for religion. So where do you go? Unless you have a substance abuse issue and you're going to an AA program or a Hands Anonymous program, where do you go if you're a recovering Catholic? you know,
Right.
or where do you go if you're recovering from anything else? There are, I don't know if we're creating these spaces, and I'm
Right.
hoping to have them everywhere, whether I'm present or not, to just
Right.
have little Buddhist boot camp, faithfully religionless circles where people come together and celebrate their faith, their joy, their lives, their success stories.
Right.
Not their drunkalogs, you know, not
Right.
the, you know, but their actual, because we need role models. We need role
Right.
models what healthy relationships look like. I mean, the media only tells us about everyone's getting divorced and what they're doing wrong and what, you know, wife number 5, and we need role models of what it looks like when it actually works.
Yeah.
We need to be able to talk about some of the challenges that we're having in our relationships without it just being us and a therapist, you know, like
Right.
having other couples present and feeling like
Yeah.
we're not alone.
Right.
But it's such a taboo for us to talk about these challenges because we're trying so hard to project this perfected image of ourselves online.
Yeah.
You know, that the Facebook only says, oh, I'm so perfect and look at my life and I'm so happy even though I'm miserable on the inside. The pictures prove otherwise. And so what I try to do is just really be honest, really be transparent and go, this is what I'm dealing with. And so I send out one monthly email, just one a month, to just really say, here, this is what's happening. And there was a long one a couple of months ago. I watched this incredible movie called Thanks for Sharing that really touched upon a topic that's really talked about. And it's, you know, the sexual responsibility and how to implement that in their lives and in couples and where do you draw that line. And it was really beautifully done. And so that created a dialogue. And, you know, I created these circles because I needed a place to talk, but it turns out everyone who comes there is there because they need a place to talk.
Yeah, it's wonderful. So tell us about your website for people who want to. So tell us all the different ways that people can participate. I know you're coming to East West Bookstore on April 3rd at 5 p.m. to sit face-to-face in circle.
In Seattle, yes.
Yeah, in Seattle. What are the other options? And I know that on your webpage you have a bunch of events and you're going all over the place.
Yeah, it's so the best way to actually know about what's going on, because it's not Facebook, unfortunately, even though I do post twice a day, every single day.
Yeah.
Facebook makes it really, really hard for me to reach everyone that's on there.
I know.
They want you to pay to reach them, and it's upward of $4,000 per post at this point, and I don't have that kind of budget. Yeah. So an email, one email a month. There's no spam. It's just, if you go to BuddhistBootcamp.com, on the right side it says join our mailing list. And again, it's just one email a month. And in that email, I always include a list of the upcoming events and through Meetup. And I know that that's not being utilized enough. What my suggestion, what my invitation is, what I've been doing is people say, but you're in Los Angeles, or you're in Hawaii, or you're in Seattle, and I'm in, you know, Massachusetts, and I want to have a Buddhist Bootcamp event, but you're not here. We can set up a Meetup group, a circle to meet somewhere. And I did that in New Jersey not that long ago, and a whole bunch of people came into a room. We all sat in a circle. I wasn't there. They propped open the laptop right where I would sit in the chair and plugged in speakers, and we had a BBC meeting without having to raise funds for airfare or tapping into Hawaiian Airlines for a flight or anything like that. And it still brought people together for all the right reasons.
Yeah, interesting.
But people are hesitant to reach out. I don't understand it. People would think, oh, why am I going to reach out? It's never going to happen. It happens every single time.
You mean, so I would basically contact you and say, hey, I'd really like to have, you know, in May, you know, I'd like to have a follow-up meeting. And then we'd have your beautiful face pop up and like, hey, hi, everyone.
Hey, there's going to be a meetup in Seattle in May at this time, at this place. Come join us.
Yeah.
And I will just Skype in. And it's really, really easy, because what people wanted initially is, because we would have these meetings in LA, well, can you podcast those, or can you video cast this? And we don't have the technology. Like, I don't know how to make that happen.
Yeah.
And then people from different parts of the world have to log in different times of day. And whereas it's much easier for the events to take place, because you said there's something special about the person-on-person thing, sitting in a circle. So getting everyone else in a circle, creating a community, and then the only person who's Skyping in is me, not everyone else, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, you could do a Google Chat.
Google Chat, exactly.
Have you done those too?
I'm going to do those. I'm hoping to do a lot more. So here's the challenge. So I'm really trying to get this next book published by the end of the year.
I got to write.
So I have to write, you know, and it's kind of compared to like being pregnant with a second kid You
Yeah.
know, you already have one kid. You can't stop feeding the first kid so you
Yeah.
can focus on the next one. So it's kind of like I still have to keep the momentum going with Buddhist Bootcamp. The message in it is really applicable, and people really do relate to it. You know, I can't just throw that aside and just focus on the next one. I
Yeah.
think they're complementary, but they're independent of one
Yeah,
another.
one is
It's
kind of
not
like
as
you said, it's the stories behind it. It's like the more
yeah.
elaboration that you would get if you sat down in a meeting with you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's what I'm hoping the second book is going to be way more personal.
Faithfully religious, religionless.
Yes, you got it.
Yes, and it's going to be at the end of the year.
Yes, that's my plan.
And when people go to your BuddhistBootcamp.com,
They'll find out.
they'll
Yeah,
find
through
it.
the same
Okay.
mailing list, timberhawkeye.com. It all goes to the same place. I'm working really hard to just kind of funnel everything to make it really, really easy because what we all want, simple and uncomplicated.
Yeah.
And it's very possible.
Love it.
So, yeah, so through BuddhistBootcamp.com, the mailing list, Instagram, Facebook, I try to do it all. It's just...
You're an incredible one-man show, I must admit. T-shirts, books, meetings, Skype.
The shirts, though, again, I have to admit, the shirts I have actually very little to nothing to do with.
Yeah.
As you know, I was contacted by the couple in Seattle who wanted to help promote the message in the book.
Yeah.
And they said, we're not a bookstore, we make shirts. Do you mind if we make some Buddhist Bootcamp shirts? And so there's a perfect example. I had to cross-reference that invitation with my core values because someone comes in and says, hey, we want to make Buddhist Bootcamp shirts. And I'm thinking, I'm not a business, I'm not a retailer, I'm not interested in making money off of this. How do I answer this great invitation? Because I've met people who never heard about the book until they saw someone wearing the shirt.
Oh, wow.
So the entire London tour was triggered by someone who saw someone wearing a Buddhist Bootcamp t-shirt at a retreat in the south of France, and so amazing how that works. So when they contacted me and they said, we want to make the shirts, all I had to do was go, okay, if you can make them organic and you can make them vegan, and if you make sure they exceed fair labor requirements every step of the way, and all the proceeds go to the nonprofit organization that whoever is buying them is choosing.
Yeah.
I don't sell $1 million. I don't care, but you just make that happen. And they did. And the shirts are an incredible way to spread the message and do good in the world while we're doing it. And
Love it.
So yeah, but I'm not doing it all alone. I do have tremendous help. You're a soldier of peace in the army of love. You're spreading the message. You're doing it. And I love you for it. Thank you so much.
I love doing it. And I love talking to the guests because everyone is just so inspiring. And what I love about the way that you're doing is you're doing it in your unique way, and in a way that is people desperately want, and in such a accessible way. It's really, after I met you, I said to my husband, like, oh my God, I am just amazed because people they're just craving this information. And so it's really nice to have a really kind of down-to-earth person delivering beautiful messages in a non-religious way.
Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you for your work. All right. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. It means so much to me that you're listening to the show. I would love your support in any way by giving me comments below, or to subscribe to the show, or share the show with friends. Thank you again for your support. Love and blessings.